Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
Good Friday morning. It is 6:07 News Talk 105.9 WMAL. You're listening to O'Connor and Company. It's your girl Patrice Onwuka, your usual Friday gal. I'm in for Larry, who's getting a well-needed vacation. And alongside me today is Hans von Spakovsky, the great Hans from the Heritage Foundation. Good morning, Hans.
Hey, Patrice, can you repeat that when my wife is around, the great Hans?
Oh, the great Hans von Spakovsky has arrived.
Yeah, it's very nice to be with you.
All right. Terrific. Well, we're going to cruise everybody into this long weekend, but let's get through the next 3 hours of showtime. At 6:30, we've got an interview with John Reid. He's running for Virginia's lieutenant governor. We'll get an update on the races there. 7:05, Mary Catherine Ham, a good friend of this show. She's going to be here to talk about the Travis Manion Foundation 9/11 run that's coming up here in Virginia, Annapolis. At 7:35, Virginia's own Governor Glenn Youngkin will be here with us. Stay tuned. At 8:05, Garrett Exner. He's a Veterans on Duty board member. Also appointed to the Virginia Military Institute Board of Visitors by Governor Youngkin. Some really interesting stuff going on there. He'll give us an update. And at 8:35, Stuart Whitson. He's running for a special election to Virginia's 11th Congressional District. He'll be joining us. Well, Hans, let's talk a little bit about. Let's focus on DC and really national, federal at this point. Really, talking about the comings and goings, the ins and outs on some of the different agencies in Washington. We're going to give folks an update on some of the firings and the hirings in the Trump administration. I will just pause and say, Hans, I have been impressed at how few the revolving door in this administration has not been revolving. Compared to Trump 1.0, we have seen few people leave their positions, be fired, other than kind of the federal workers who needed to go. Right. But the more senior level, cabinet level officials, high-ranking officials, we really haven't seen a lot of movement there. And I think that speaks to the quality of the candidate, of the people in office who've been appointed, but also to the fact that they're committed to the Trump agenda compared to the first time around.
Well,
now, to those who may not be, Federal Reserve Board of Governors. We've been following this story now for a while. We have an embattled Federal Reserve Governor. The Federal Reserve we know is a quasi-federal agency. They're the ones who are setting the interest rates. That we're waiting to see when they're going to drop the interest rates, cut them at least. One of the governors, Lisa Cook, she had been slapped with a criminal referral previously over, her mortgages, whether she committed mortgage fraud. Well, this week, yesterday, in fact, a second criminal referral was filed against Lisa Cook, alleging that she made some, quote, misrepresentations on mortgage documents and government disclosures. This is the second one around. This complaint has been sent to the DOJ by the Federal Housing Finance Agency Director, Bill Pulte. He actually made the first one, too, the first criminal referral against her. And on X, he posted about it, pretty much saying that this is related to a mortgage on a third property. So Ms. Cook has a lot of property, and I don't knock her for that. The question is whether on the mortgage applications that she is submitting to get, mortgage loans, whether she misrepresented her situation or the use of the property. Instead, whether she called them primary residences, and in fact, she intended fully from day one to not live in those residences, but actually to, rent them out. And, the issue there is that if a primary residence gets a much lower mortgage rate than as an investor, an investment property would. And so this is a bad look. Earlier this week, President Trump actually fired her, said it's time to go. This was just after the first criminal referral. And so here we have a second one. And I think this is all the more ammunition and, frankly, evidence that President Trump has to remove her from office. What's your take, though, on this story?
Yeah, people need to understand that when you're filling out mortgage applications, if you lie, you're committing a crime. And that includes the fact that, as you mentioned, if what you're buying is your primary residence, you're going to get a lower interest rate. So if you're lying, if this is just a vacation home, it's not your primary residence, but you claim that, you can get in big trouble. And to have this coming from a public official, someone like Ms. Cook, who is given the obligations and responsibilities of the public's trust, is really, really outrageous. And, it's too bad Trump had to fire her. She should have resigned on her own while this was pending. And for anybody who thinks this is not serious, we should keep in mind the former district attorney in Baltimore, Maryland. Remember?
Yes.
She was criminally prosecuted for this because she bought I think it was a vacation home in Florida and claimed it was her primary residence. And she was prosecuted for that and for perjury for lying about it.
It's so interesting because with this lady, Lisa Cook, who's one of the Federal Reserve governors, she number one, she is fighting her dismissal. She's fighting the removal. So she's saying she's not leaving and that she's going to have to, she's going to see President Trump in court. That's an original line, right? And so it's bad on so many different levels. Number one, she's a public official. Right. Number two, she is involved. She is making the decisions over the interest rates that every single American is feeling when they're paying their credit card bill, their auto loan, any sort of interest that is charged. She's helping to set the rates that they get. And yet she would allegedly here, bend the system, bend the rules, break the rules, as you're talking about from a criminal perspective, just so that she can get a better financial position. And you know what? This is what we're seeing with Letitia James. She's being investigated for mortgage fraud. Our own Maryland senator, U.S. Senator Angela Alsobrooks, had an interesting history with the potential mortgage fraud. I think she said that she cleared it up. She paid the taxes that she owed. But it's really interesting when you see these policymakers, people who believe that the rules should be for you and me, Hans, should be for the listeners, but not for them. And hey, I get that they may not get the big paychecks that they're looking for, and they want to have extra property, and they want to have a second home. Don't we all? It doesn't mean that they get to break the rules, no matter how many people do it, and think that they can live in the public eye and not get any scrutiny for this.
Yeah, but, under the Biden administration, they could. If you were if you were a Democratic politician, it's not like this is new. Particularly not with Letitia James, for example, in New York. I mean, this all happened. The application and so forth that she made for this all happened a while ago. If Kamala Harris had gotten elected, I can pretty much guarantee you that these criminal referrals would go nowhere because the Justice Department would not do anything about it.
Well, she's claiming, this Ms. Lisa Cook is claiming that, that President Trump can't fire her. Let's play pretty quickly here. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, listen to what he has to say about that claim.
People like President Trump and myself who think that if a Fed official committed mortgage fraud, that this should be examined and that they shouldn't be serving as one of the nation's leading financial regulators. And what we haven't heard from Ms. Cook is we haven't heard her say, I didn't do it. We haven't heard her say, I didn't do it. She just keeps saying the president can't remove her. The other thing, too, that I have called in the recent past for an internal review of all the Fed's operations, and I've encouraged Chair Powell to do this on an internal basis before there is an external review. And this is the kind of thing that needs to be addressed because the Fed is an unaccountable institution, and its relationship with the American people depends on a high level of trust. And
Bingo. Treasury Secretary Bessent gets it. This is about trust. And the fact that she said that she's denying the allegations against her tells us everything we need to know, Hans. All right, it is 6:16.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
All right, so Hans, let's leave the Federal Reserve and let's hop over to the CDC. This week, there has been a lot of alarm, a lot of, wringing of hands because the CDC director and others have left. Several agency leaders have resigned or been removed from the CDC by the current head of Department of Health and Human Services, our Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. And so now we have actually a new replacement here. The White House yesterday selected a top deputy of RFK Jr. to act as the acting head of the CDC for now. His name is Jim O'Neill, and he currently, as I said, serves as the deputy secretary at HHS. Now, this is obviously going to make for a lot of headlines because the CDC is a pretty important arm, right? And a lot of this has to deal with vaccine policies, whether, for example, we should, how many vaccines children should be receiving, what vaccine policies are, even the COVID vaccine. And I think a lot of this also, Hans, is really just DC bureaucrats who've had their cushy jobs for decades, who've wielded a lot of power in the realm of public health, feeling like they want to push back, that they don't like the changes that are being made. And so they're protesting. Yesterday, there was a protest outside of either HHS or the CDC, whichever agency it was, but really trying to flex their muscles and make everyone think and fear the worst that, the next pandemic is about to happen because of the changes at the CDC. That's my reading. What is your reading? Well,
you said the CDC is supposed to deal with public health. But it's gone far beyond that over the years. It has funded all kinds of studies on things that have nothing to do with public health. It tells you a lot that one of those bureaucrats who just left the agency, he put out a letter. You read that letter, and it tells you why he shouldn't be there. He talks about pregnant persons.
Oh, goodness.
He signs it with all these different pronouns, which says that he is the most divorced person from actual science you could imagine, and yet he's one of the leaders, of the CDC. The CDC is supposed to be dealing with diseases, and yet, for example, as you know, they did all kinds of stuff in having to do with guns. When someone is killed with a gun, as terribly happened in Minneapolis. That's not a public health disease, but that shows the bloating, and they're stretching into all kinds of areas pushed by the liberal, frankly, non-scientists who were heading the CDC.
Yeah, I mean, the CDC, the pandemic should have been the opportunity for the CDC and, frankly, all of our public health, the public health apparatus to demonstrate their importance to society. And I think that they do serve an important value in society. But to your point about them, the mission creep, where they have expanded beyond what their core functions should be, and also we've had to question what their core functions are. What are they doing? What research are we funding through them that is making us sicker? And I think back to the origins of COVID-19. But these CDC officials who have left or resigned or been fired, they're upset because of the changes at the CDC. The agency, according to, I believe this is the Washington Post reporting here, has lost about 3/4 of its staff here. A quarter of its staff, some 3,000 employees since President Trump took office, and that's through the reductions in the workforce, the retirement, save incentives, firings, layoffs, etc. And so you've got these bureaucrats, and hey, I actually do know some people who work at the CDC and work in kind of public health. I think it's an important moment for them to think and really look at what what their mission is. Are they faithful to the mission, and are they faithful to the American people? And a little scrutiny is not a bad thing. I think we all in the private sector certainly get scrutinized, and our outcomes, not just the work we do and the papers we push, but our actual outcomes get scrutinized. And unfortunately, in a lot of these government agencies and bureaucrats, their outcomes are never questioned until now. Until now, somebody is asking the tough questions about, why are we funding this type of research? Why are we sending this type of money overseas? How does it benefit Americans when it comes to the vaccine conversation? Why do our kids have such a long schedule of vaccines? Are our kids healthier as a consequence of it? I don't think that makes people skeptics. I think that's just a good question about science and how it impacts the day-to-day lives of regular folks. But I don't think these bureaucrats see it that way.
Well, Patrice, and remember that there were, through FOIA disclosures, there were all kinds of internal communications that came out indicating that the leadership of the CDC decided not to tell Americans the truth about some of the shortcomings, for example, of the COVID vaccine. And talk about mission creep. Remember, folks had to go to court to sue the CDC during the COVID pandemic because the CDC came out and said, we have the power to tell landlords all over the country, you can't terminate any rental leases of people who quit paying their rent because of the COVID pandemic. I mean, the idea that the CDC thought it had the power to do that is just crazy, but they did. And that is a sign of just how over the top the CDC had gone.
Well, there is a new sheriff in town from the top, and he's got a lot of deputy sheriffs at all of these agencies that are righting the wrongs that we've saw during COVID, but have been going on for decades, Hans. And I'm here for the ride. It is 6:24. All right, coming up, we've got John Reid. He's running for Virginia's lieutenant governor. He will give us an update on the race. Stay with us. It's O'Connor and Company at 6:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. WMAL. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
All right, it is 6:37. News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We are making sense of the news this Friday morning as we ease on into the long Labor Day weekend. I'm Patrice Onwuka. You know my voice every Friday. I'm in here for Larry, and alongside me is Hans von Spakovsky, the great Hans from the Heritage Foundation. Hans, thanks for staying with me all morning.
Well, sure. And I'm not here every Friday, but occasionally on Fridays.
Yes, you are. And we have a great time together. Well, let's give our listeners the rundown. At 7:05, Mary Catherine Ham, a good friend of the show, she's going to be joining us to talk about the upcoming Travis Manion Foundation 9/11 run. That's going to be here in Virginia and Annapolis. 7:35, Virginia's own Governor Glenn Youngkin, will be here. At 8:05, Garrett Exner. He was appointed to the Virginia Military Institute Board of Governors by Governor Youngkin. He's going to join us. And at 8:30, Stuart Whitson, who's running for Virginia's 11th Congressional District. He's going to be here to give us an update. But right now, I am happy to welcome to the program Mr. John Reid, who is running for Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. Good morning, John.
Good morning. Now I'm going to have to hang around and listen to the whole show. You got a great rundown on
We've got Virginia covered, so yeah, absolutely. Well, we're looking forward to talking with you about, your race. I mean, you have closed the gap. You are neck and neck with your competitor, Ms. Ghazla Hashmi. I would love for you to respond to this clip of her. I think some folks might have heard this, but this is what you're up against. Cut 13, Michael.
I know the fear of being attacked. Trump's hate pushed me to run and flip the state Senate.
All right, so she is saying that her hate for Trump pushed her to run. Take it away, John. Why are you running for lieutenant governor?
Well, There are a lot of reasons. 2020 and 2021, I think, were really bad for Virginia. I think Democrats, when they were in power, made a lot of bad decisions that harmed a lot of people, and they still don't totally get it. Even when they lost and Glenn Youngkin, Winsome Sears, and Jason Miyares were put in office to kind of counter these bad decisions, some of them directly related to bad decisions in Northern Virginia with the school system, telling parents to buzz off. I mean, they still don't seem to have gotten the message. But I will tell you that I decided to leave my radio show and a career in international business to do this because I'm a native Virginian. I know how great Virginia can be. We've had a good 4 years under Governor Youngkin. I think we can continue that trend. I think with my personal background in business and my interactions in politics, kind of bridging two different worlds, I'll be able to find common ground with a lot of people who've never voted Republican before. And I think I can bring people to the Republican Party and to conservative principles that will serve us all well going forward. And that's the proposition I'm offering, is reasonable, being responsible, and being fair at the state capitol. And we're close to losing that if we let the Democrats back in.
John, you know, I'm glad to see that poll, but I'm not surprised because, you know, you'll recall I saw you working the crowd at I think it was the July 4th parade in Fairfax County, and that's a pretty blue area, but you were getting a great reception from the crowd there.
Well, you know, I think a lot of Democrat areas in Virginia are used to Republicans saying, I'm not coming because we won't win. Heck with that. I'm going everywhere across the state. I haven't taken a day off since January 27th when I announced that I was running and I left the radio program. And I'm going to speak to groups and to people who I think I might have some commonality with, who might be open to listening to conservative principles, but we've just never approached them before. Plus, I try to be a high-energy, friendly guy, and if you want to get into a fight, I'll get into a fight with you. But I'd really like to try to win people over to our side of the political spectrum, and I think I've been pretty good at doing that so far.
And you haven't had evenings off either. I think weren't you at a school board meeting last night?
Whew, I'm still feeling it. It was really kind of tension-filled yesterday in Fairfax. There was probably 100 people, no kidding, who were defending this kind of, I think, insane trans policy, which is just tearing up school systems and ruining the experience for students all over the Commonwealth, not just in Northern Virginia. And then I was specifically there talking about this horrible story which lingers. We're now 2 weeks past when it broke, about the school system, at least some employees, taking two young girls, kind of bullying them into getting abortions, keeping it secret from the parents. Who's okay with that? Nobody's okay. Even Democrats tell me, well, I'm for abortion, but I'm not. I want to know what my kid's doing. Heck yeah, you want to know what your kids are doing. And these arrogant bureaucrats, and I don't think this is a one-off. I mean, it'd be one thing if this was just one mistake. I think we're seeing a pattern of these school system employees, sometimes teachers, but often bureaucrats, basically saying, hey, we'll keep something secret from the parents. Well, that's got to stop, and Republicans are going to make sure it stops.
Well, and you know, when you look at some of the other Democrats running for office, including your opponent, Ms. Hashmi, but also Abigail Spanberger, who's running to be governor. I mean, they are running from this issue around parental control and this issue around, you know, bureaucrats, educational bureaucrats, you know, trying to, taking young girls to get abortions, potentially on taxpayer dimes, or even sanctuary policies supporting those. I mean, I think you have a really great case to make that that's not what Virginians really want, sanctuary policies and bureaucrats run amok in the education system.
Yeah. Look, there's a story coming out today that's going to shock people from my hometown in Richmond. And I don't want to spoil it because the authors worked very diligently to research this, but there are a lot of people in the jails in Richmond who are illegal and who have been accused of really horrible crimes up to and including murder. And our prosecutor in Richmond, another Democrat soft on crime prosecutor, refuses to take that seriously. And I think at some point, and I think it's right about now, once people are aware of the danger they're in, they're going to reject Abigail Spanberger, Ghazala Hashmi, Jay Jones, all the Democrats who constantly side with the criminals instead of those of us who are up at 6:30 in the morning on a Friday getting ready to go to work, trying to pay our bills. I would like to see politicians and government leaders side with the working people, the folks who pay the taxes, who stay out of trouble, instead of constantly making excuses for the criminals.
Yeah,
your lips. Sorry, Hans. Your lips to God's ears, John Reid. We got to leave it right there. But November 4th, that's the big day in Virginia. So folks can definitely go to John Reid for Virginia on social media, learn more, and get out there. John, thanks so much for your time this morning.
And early voting on the 19th of September. My gosh, it's coming fast. So I really appreciate you talking to me. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Chris Plant here, inviting you to join us next July on our Mediterranean Listener Sea Cruise. Early booking sale pricing ends August 30th. Visit ChrisPlantCruise.com.
All right. So, Hans, earlier this week, we had an update from the FDA where they were updating COVID-19 shots and really limiting use for kids and most adults, and really just limiting new shots or approving new shots from Pfizer, Moderna, and Novavax for seniors. I mean, this is the common sense that we've come to recognize that the public health community should be spreading, which is, yes, COVID shots are great if you're seniors or maybe if you have certain health conditions. But otherwise, you probably don't need one every year. And cue the alarm at the Washington or at AP and the Washington Post, who are making it seem like the Trump administration is getting rid of FDA of COVID-19 shots. But thankfully, we've got the FDA Commissioner, Dr. Marty Makary, bringing the common sense. Let's play cut 15.
The FDA did two things. One, we approved COVID vaccines for the newest strain, and they're for high-risk individuals. Second thing we did is remove the emergency use authorization for COVID vaccines, which will eliminate the possibility of doing mandates in young, healthy subjects. Mandates are no longer legally possible. But anyone who wants to get a vaccine can get a vaccine. Remember, 20% of medications in the United States are given off-label. The vaccines will still be available. We want to put the power back with doctors and their patients. We want these decisions to be a discussion. The government is not your doctor.
That is a perfect line, Hans. The government is not your doctor.
Well, that's right. And there's one thing, Patrice, you and I and all your listeners know, because Marty Makary obviously was often a guest on the show, is he's a lot smarter than the editorial page of the Washington Post. And he certainly knows what he's talking about. And look, back when all this was going on, we saw the data, for example, with kids who weren't getting affected, weren't dying, weren't getting sick from this, and yet everybody was saying, "Oh, they've got to be vaccinated." Reality didn't match what, for example, the CDC was telling us.
Exactly. Well, thank goodness we've got smart people like Dr. Marty Makary in charge, making these decisions. It's 6:52.